Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Matt Hestor. I'm a Tech 10 presenter on the Microsoft Across America team, and today I want to talk to you about another great feature inside of Windows Server 2008, Terminal Services. Specifically, I want to talk to you about the Terminal Services Gateway service. This is another installable role service that we have on the server that I've already gone ahead and installed. And I'll tell you what, this is a great service because it enables just a wonderfully secure scenario where we can actually take the Windows Server terminal services abilities that we have and authorize remote users to connect to resources on an internal network or a private network or from another kind of internet device. And the resources we can connect to can be terminal servers running remote apps or remote desktop enabled. The great thing about this, folks, this is actually running across the web browser. More importantly, it's using RDP over HTTPS technology. This is very similar to how we enable this with inside of Outlook, where we don't need a VPN connection to actually be able to connect back to do this work. So now what we're able to do is actually work with terminal services without having the VPN into the network to actually take advantage of the capabilities and the applications that we may share there. So it makes it very, very easy to work over top of these things. It's over port 443. Nice feature that we have ability inside of it. We can even, if we need to, tie this feature into our NAP capability, our network access protection facilities to help quarantine or work with systems. I'll talk about that in another screencast. But the great thing about this is that they really allow us to take a look at our applications and our server applications in a much nicer fashion to work with it. So here I have my terminal service gateway servers available for you. And I will tell you the step-by-step guide, it's about 87 pages, is a great document to help set this up. But we actually have some built-in help here inside of the Gateway Manager to actually set up some checklists to what we have to do. You have to install a Gateway Role Service, which you've already done. You have to get a certificate. Now, this certificate could be a CA, it could be a third-party cert. You have to have some kind of certificate there. Now, the great thing about this, if you're just doing this for testing, kind of like what I've done today, is you don't necessarily need an enterprise certificate authority to test it or some other cert to go buy or purchase. You can actually create inside of the Gateway Manager tool itself a self-signed certificate authority tool, and then the rest is just a matter of setting up what policies you have. So if I go into my actual properties of this, I have the ability to look at the different properties of my actual server itself as well as the connection authority. So I'm going to hop into the properties here. And notice we can say how many connections. You want to limit the connections. You can do that here. We could also have an SSL certificate. Now, I've actually already created a self-signed one, and that's what I'm using for this demo. Now, obviously, in a business, folks, you're going to want to go ahead and use some of those enterprise certificate authorities or however you do that kind of authentication mechanism. But essentially, for evaluation and testing purposes, the self-signed certificate is a very viable way to work with this. And this is where you can actually set it up. Now, how does this actually work? How do we actually set all of this up? So after you have a certificate authority, it's just now a matter of letting our clients use this. Now, before we can actually allow people inside of the gateway service for this, we have to set up what are called connection authorization policies, or CAPs for short. And what these actually do are just simple permissions that allow certain areas or groups to come into it. So I'm going to go ahead and just step through the creation of a new one, and I'll go through the wizard here. It says, what do you want to do? Do you just want to create a connection authentication policy? I'm going to do that just for now. We'll call this test. And it's going to ask us, first off, what kind of authentication mechanism. So if you're going to allow people to have terminal service application, we can just make it a password or a smart card authentication, depending on how you're enabling this inside your environment. And really all we're doing is simply adding in what groups do we want to allow into this. So I'm going to go ahead and add in domain users just for fun. And we could add even client computer groups as well that are associated with it who can come into this, although that's purely optional. And then it asks, how do you want to actually do redirection for the devices? The nice thing about this is you only want to allow this kind of capability when people are connecting to it, and more importantly for computers that you're actually trusting inside your environment for this. But at the end of the day, notice what it sets up here when we set up these device redirections and these actual policies that are here. It basically allows us to take a look at a kind of a rule. Hey, if the user's in the following group and the client is a member of this, and we didn't specify that, then use the following password authentication. Then they allow the users to connect to the gateway and disable device redirection for the following client devices. So what we could actually go into is even more specific policies of not allowing certain devices to be used and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and just cancel out of that, but you get a general idea. All that connection authorization policy is enabling us to do is just determine who can actually come in to this environment. Now, not only do you have to set up a connection authorization policy, you also have to set up what is called a resource authorization policy. And what this allows us to do is specify, okay, if they come in with the gateway service, what resources can they actually connect to and work with inside of here? So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's create a new policy, go through the wizard again. I'm just going to create a wrap. Okay, once again, I'll just call this test to get by the screen. Once again, we're defining what groups can actually come in here. So this one we might be a little more prescriptive with, but once again, I'm just going to select domain users. Notice the multiple ways we can do that. We could add in computer groups if we need to. I'm just going to say allow users to connect to any network resource if they're coming into this. What ports do we want these connections when the RDP comes in? How do we want to actually, when you think about this, when our terminal services clients connect to these resources over 3389, this is basically the RDP connection. So what we want to do is specify whether to use the 3389 or we have other ports that we might need to get to. And this all depends on how you've configured your environment in the back end. Once again, very, very simple rule. The resource authorization policy and allows those systems to actually come in and work with inside of our environments. At the end of the day, we can always go back in and take a look at the properties and change any of this ability to allow those users inside of it. Really, the wrap allow us to come in and work with those different resources. And when you think about it, when you combine the connection authorization policies, the CAPs, with the resource authorization policies, the wraps, they really give you two different levels of authorization, provide you with the ability to configure a much more detailed level of access control to computers on an internal network, and they really work in conjunction to make sure these things are set up properly. But that's really what we do to go in and set up our gateway processes. Now, after we set up our gateway server and we've actually allowed these systems to come in, what kind of things do we need to do on the client that may actually make them work with the service? It's actually pretty easy to do. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording for just a quick second. I'm going to switch over to my Windows Vista Enterprise client and show you the properties that I configure on that. So here I am back on my Windows Vista Enterprise desktop client. Let me go ahead and bring up the remote desktop connection. And this is how we fire this up. And inside of here, I simply go to Options. I go to the Advanced tab inside of Options, and I go to the Settings tab. And it actually, we can do automatically terminal service gateway services. And what this actually says is, you know what, hey, if I can't get there directly, let's try to go out through the gateway services and make that happen. Or we can say, you know what, let's make sure that we use the gateway service settings. And I'm going to clear this box that says bypass gateway server for local addresses. The only reason I'm doing that is for my demo environment. I have two systems that are connected on the same local subnet. So what it allows me to do is show you that I actually am connecting via the terminal services gateway processes inside the environment. And basically what I'm doing here is configuring and telling it to use that terminal server gateway. And then it's going to do the automatic redirection, and basically the terminal server is going to gateway me into the box. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Connect. And log on. Give it a second to chug here. And then it's going to allow me to connect. I'm going to go ahead and pause while it's connecting in the background, and I'll be back in just a second. Here we have, notice I'm actually connected back to the server. I'm actually logged in and I'm working with this, and now I'm all connected and ready to go inside of this. Now I just happened to do a remote desktop connection. I didn't really do any filtering on the apps, but that's how we actually set this up and how we actually work with it. Thank you for tuning into this quick screencast on the gateway services capabilities. Check out the white paper that does the step-by-step guide in the link following this screencast to get you more detailed information on how to set this up. Thank you and have a great day.